Welcome to One Real Story. This is a real talk. This is our short segment where we highlight entrepreneurs and their businesses with quick tips and advice. And today we have Mike LeJeune. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for being on our show.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be in Florida in January.
Right?
So that's pretty awesome.
It's a little chilly, though.
It is a little chilly. We left home, it was 30-something. I got up this morning, it was 40-something. So I was like, that was disappointing. Oh, wow. But last night it was, I think, 65 on the beach. So that was pretty cool.
So you're bringing the cold air down.
I think we brought it with us. So Floridians, is that how you call it? You guys can all blame us. So
well, don't worry about it. It won't be here long.
Yeah.
All right. So look. You're here at the Voice Hub, and I'm fortunate to have you here in our podcast studio. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the podcast studio is amazing. So, as an entrepreneur, when I talk about, and we'll talk about the book in a little bit, when I talk about branding yourself, one of the biggest pieces of content that I always talk about is a podcast and audio and things like that. And for entrepreneurs to understand that there's so much value out there to just sit and talk for 20, 30 minutes about something you're passionate about, for people to get to know you and follow you. Our podcast is the number one way people even find our business. Yeah. And so to have a center like this that you can come to and record these podcasts, have them professionally done, because I'll tell you, if you have done a podcast before in your own, it's a nightmare setting up your bedroom with the sound properly, the equipment properly to capture the audio in a way that's professional. And out of everything, if there's something that's going to kill a podcast, it's the sound quality and not the content.
Yeah,
so to have a studio you can jump into and do this for this area, I think it's fantastic. So I love what you guys have done here. So.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And by the way, what's your podcast?
So my podcast is Game Changers for Government Contractors. It's one of the most popular podcasts for government contractors. So
that's pretty awesome. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I think we just posted episode 130 or something like that. We have a little over 100,000 downloads on it, and it's rocking and rolling. And yeah, it's been a blast.
I'm gonna have to add that to my favorites on either Spotify or something.
And we just got on Spotify last week, so we're now on Spotify and Amazon as of last week. So
nice. So Mike, outside of podcasting and having Game Changers as the podcast, what do you do on the civilian side of the house?
So our business is RSM Federal, and our focus is on helping government contractors really figure out how to grow and accelerate in the market. So how do you win contracts faster? That's a huge part of it. The average company takes somewhere between 3 and 5 years to learn the market. Yeah. That's just with terminology, and it's just a different market. And so if you couple that with the concept that the average business goes out of business within the first 3 to 5 years, and then the difficulty of learning this market, you tie those two things together. And if we can shorten that from 3 to 5 years to 3 to 6 months, now companies can survive, they can learn the market, they can win contracts faster, and they can grow. And so to date, our clients have won almost $2.8 billion in government contracts and another $30 million in these MATOCs or IDIQs. And so billions and billions of dollars just using these strategies that we have on how to win government contracts. So that's the primary thing we do. So.
That is pretty good though, because you can do something as small as supply pencils and paper under government contracting, right?
You could sell it. I always tell people the government buys everything. They buy anything from the old phrase is beans and bullets, right? They got to buy beans and bullets, but they've also got to buy cybersecurity and different things. So I think the government, the biggest opportunities are if you are in any sort of staffing. So the old phrase would be butts in seats, right? Is putting people in seats at a job somewhere, whether it's physically in the government or remotely, however it is. That's just really thriving. And then there's the whole product side. And just about anything you could possibly imagine on the product side or in the construction side, like all of that stuff. And so I'm always amazed at what the government buys. I think one of the funny ones we saw the other day is, they even buy pianos. They buy everything. Yeah. So yeah, there's no shortage.
So you say it with passion. And I'm feeling this passion because it's almost like if you're starting a business, you want to work smart, you want to work smarter, not harder.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think the government route, with a quality of service that you could provide is an opportunity to sustain a longer business life for your business.
Yeah.
And you're the place to go to learn how to do this when you're starting.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. So when I first started my business, I actually came out of the government, started my commercial business. Here's the biggest wake-up call you will ever get. There's no list. There's no target market. There's no you can't pull a list of what RFPs are coming out. So like if you're selling what we would call B2C, business to commercial, or even business to business, there's no data. There's none. If you're selling B2G, so business to government, there's a long list of data. You know what their budgets are. You know who's bought stuff in the past. You can look them up in one website, find their names, phone numbers, email address to figure out who's buying what. And you know when an RFP comes out, you can go bid on it. Where in the government space, you're like, well, if I'm trying to sell to IBM, for example, or someone else like that, any of those type of companies, they don't publish anything. So you really, if you're just selling B2C, business to commercial, it is an uphill battle to identify your target market. Then once you've identified them and said, oh, they look like this type of company, then, well, where do I find them? Well, good luck. There's 1,000 ways to find them, but how do you do it? Whereas with the government, it's a very simple process. And most of their contracts are not like, okay, you bought something, then it's done. Sometimes on the product side, most of them are multi-year contracts. Then once they bought from you, the good thing and the bad thing about the government is they don't like change. So once they bought from you, they don't like to change. If you deliver, they want to buy from you again and again and again. So it really is a very stable environment. You just have to learn it, and it doesn't take long. So
right. So now you can become a provider to the government agency or whatever from products and services.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And one of the cool things is, let's say I had a guy come to me last week and he said, look, I'm in the design area and I do a lot of design and this and that, but my passion is fitness. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, why don't you just spin off a division? Because he's like, that's what I really want to sell, right? Well, you can spin off a division, create a DBA for it. Now you sort of have two companies. You may be running it through the same LLC, but now I can have one company on paper that's selling cybersecurity and design and this and that. I can have another company that, on the other hand, is selling the fitness training and all of those types of things. Because now that once you know the market, you just apply it to different agencies.
Yeah,
it's just rinse and repeat once you learn it. So,
and this is a topic that we can talk about a lot because I think our listeners could learn a lot from this, and I learn a lot from you as well. So when you say RFP, now RFP, a government agency, they have a need and they put out a request for a proposal.
Yep.
Now, does your company or do you help with companies to be able to respond accordingly to it, to be able to possibly win the contract?
We will help them with the training on the front end, so understanding what needs to go in it professionally and all those kind of things. We have some templates they can use. And then we have partners. So sometimes people think, well, I need you to write my RFP. Well, you probably don't. But here's what you do need. Because most people will say, well, I'll just respond to the RFP and I'll answer their questions and I'm going to win, right? Well, if you don't know how to translate your past performance to in a way that shows value and metrics and things like that, you're probably not going to win because they're going to see you just responded to the questions, but you didn't do it in a way they're looking for. So we'll help you shape all of that information with your company. And then you'll use that in your company, on your website, in your little one sheet, your capability statements. You'll use that forever in everything you do. You'll be smarter about how you approach the RFP. And then if we need to bring in a writer, we have the resources. So we will team you up with a writer for it. So
okay, all right. Now, your background, military, right?
My background is Army.
Army.
So, yeah, right. And I was in basic training before I realized I was in the wrong branch and should have been a Marine. Although I don't know if that would have been worse, right? With a name like LeJeune. So that was tough for a while. But yeah, I was in the Army for 4 years. I was at Fort Hood the whole time. Enjoyed it very thoroughly, but as most people know, it doesn't pay very well. So I got out and became a contractor and did that for a few years. And then we spun off our own company several years after that. So
that's pretty awesome. Because, entrepreneurship is extremely difficult, right?
Yes,
you have
absolutely.
your ups and downs and being able to power through, but it's also about networking.
Yeah.
And making business relationships in order to get the advice, get the knowledge that you need in order to scale your business accordingly, right?
Yep.
So What other type of advice would you give for new veterans that are looking to be entrepreneurs, start their own businesses, or just in general?
Yeah, well, we could go down a rabbit hole all evening on this one. This is a good one. But, you know, I do think networking is a big one. You know, I got my first job out of the Army because my colonel got out, became a VP of a company, and I sent in my resume, and boom, I was hired.
Oh, wow.
You know, that's how I got on. I met Josh through that company. Josh Frank is my partner, and we worked together in that company for a few years. Then we separated we went our separate ways for almost a decade. And then I heard what he was doing. He heard what I was doing, and we teamed back up, and now we run a company together and we're partners. And so networking is a big one. I would think one of the big points here is education too. I think as an entrepreneur, when you're your own boss, one of the reasons you do it is because you're tired of listening to everybody else, right? And you want to be your own boss. You want to make your own schedule. You know, you and I were talking earlier, and you're here on Saturday tomorrow because you make your own schedule, but that's your choice, right? But I think it's very easy to stop educating yourself on things, and I'm constantly educating myself. I don't want to sound arrogant here when I say this, but would be considered at the top of my field in what I do, and yet every day I'm educating myself some way, whether it's a short podcast, whether it's reading a book, and it's not all even from my industry. If I would start listing names, most of the names that I would say of people that educate me, nobody on the podcast would know. Yeah. If you're in government, if you're in a commercial world, like, oh yeah, I know Frank Kern and Gary Vaynerchuk and this person and that, I know those guys. But I'm getting education on the fundamentals, because to me, it's the fundamentals that we overlook, because we think, hey, I'm just going to run my business, and, you know, I just need to know how to, you know, sell construction or sell IT or whatever it is. And you need to know how to market your business. You need to know how to sell it, and just constantly educating yourself on a lot of those fundamentals is one of the biggest things. And then just for time's sake, the only other one I would say is just the perseverance. You know, it's so easy to give up. And for me, I'll be the one to admit, when I first got out, started my own business, put a lot of my money in it. A lot of my money, an obscene amount of money, you know, in the six figures amount of money into growing a business. Took money out of my 401k, started growing the business, was all in. And of course I knew everything. And then I woke up one day and didn't have any clients. And I woke up one day and was sitting in a lawyer's office declaring bankruptcy. And I actually went to 2 lawyers before I did, because I was like, this sucks so bad. I can't do this. And, you know, just give yourself an adrenaline shot to go and do a little bit more. And then finally wound up declaring bankruptcy in my first business because I didn't know what I was doing. But I was like, you know what? I'm not giving up the dream. I'm going to start over. I'm going to come back. And now we're stronger than ever, and we're growing very, very rapidly. But it was not overnight. So the perseverance, and it's hard too when your wife is like, you need to go get a job, you know, and it's so, you know, just the perseverance to say, you know, I think we can do it. I think we can do it. And finally for your wife to say, I know you're smart enough, but I don't know that you can do it, to finally say, oh yes, you have done it. And, you know, this is awesome. But it took us, you know, 15 years to get where we are today. So
that's a lot to be said, right? Yeah. I mean, it just like you said, it's not overnight, and it's about continuous education and you know, building on your human capital in a sense to be smarter, to make better decisions. But you can't be afraid to read. So just as you're an author as well. Yeah. And you have a new book that's coming out. Yep. Right? You want to tell us a little bit about that? Yeah, this is, I've helped a lot of folks write bestsellers, and this will be our 3rd book for RSM. It's called Becoming a GovCon Expert. All of the summit leaders for the GovCon Summit, I know we wanted to talk about that. The GovCon Summit leaders all wrote 3 chapters in the book. So my 3 chapters focus on, the first one is leading the way. It's really about the leadership you need and how your most important asset is your vision. So your vision for the company and how that just trickles down to all the people on your team. So that's leading the way. Then I talk about building your GovCon pipeline, which is probably one of the most important things you need to focus on as a government contractor, is building that pipeline and constantly refreshing that, staying on top of it, and some tips and tricks, because I think
building your business pipeline really starts with your mindset and how you look at things. And most people write off opportunities that if they were to think differently, they'd put it in their pipeline. Because again, they're thinking commercial versus government. If they put it in their pipeline and manage it a certain way, they're going to really grow their business. But my favorite chapter is about actually branding yourself as a subject matter expert in GovCon. Because I think most people, again, think I'm going to build the brand. Yeah. I'm going to focus on what I'm selling. But they don't really think about the assets you need to create. And I focus really heavily on a podcast, on LinkedIn, and then writing a book. And just how easy it is to do those things. And I walk through our systems on how we do that. And we just have a very simple system where it's just locked and loaded on how we're going to write the chapters, how we're going to publish to Amazon, why we use Amazon, how we become best sellers, and how we get that out to the market. And then on the back end, how those assets help boost our brand in the market so that we can be recognized. Because a friend of mine once told me, he said it was James Malachek. He was one of the first guys on ABC's Secret Millionaire. And he told me one day, he was like, Mike, you have to understand, somebodies get paid more than nobodies. And you want to be a somebody.
Yeah.
Because there's somebody right now doing the same thing you're doing and nobody knows about them. They're getting paid $100,000 a year. But there's a somebody who's probably not even as good as that person who's built a brand in the market and they're getting paid $1 million a year doing the same thing. This guy, the $1 million guy's probably actually working less, but he's built a brand around him and people know him because he's a somebody.
Yeah.
And that's what, and so that's a lot of what that chapter is about, really helping you focus on, you're not just building a company that builds revenue. You need to create assets and these other things that build your awareness in the market so people know who you are. So it'll live on. Because one day, if you're an entrepreneur listening to this, one day, I don't care what you're doing, you're going to wake up one day and say, I'm tired of this and I want to do something else. You're going to get a new passion. If you're in IT services, you wake up one day and say, you know what? I want to build surfboards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're a somebody can go from IT services to building surfboards and you take your following with you. And then you get tired of surfboards and you take your following with you and you just keep building your brand. And so that's really my focus in that one. So that doesn't matter what you sell.
That's pretty powerful.
So
that's
my
powerful.
focus. So
yeah. So that is your favorite chapter. In
that's
the
my
book.
favorite chapter. That's my favorite chapter I've ever written. So,
really?
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you haven't, or if you plan, you should plan on getting that book and reading Mike LeJeune's chapter in there. Leading, what was it called?
Yeah, so I have Leading the Way is the one on leadership. Then I have Building Your GovCon Pipeline. And then my favorite is Branding Yourself as a GovCon SME.
So. Branding yourself as a GovCon SME. Now, GovCon stands for government contracting?
Yeah, government contracting. Yeah, so that's a widely accepted term, to just talk about GovCon as the market of government contracting. Yeah.
That's a lot. This is a lot in one little short segment.
It's a lot.
Like, Mike, I have to have you on again because we can go a lot longer, and I would like to dive more into your background.
Absolutely, man.
So now, not only is this book just to help, business owners and try to help get them more understanding and clear understanding in the GovCon arena, you also have a GovCon Summit, correct?
Yes, we have. And it's funny, the GovCon Summit came before the book, but as we were getting ready for the GovCon Summit 2021, what I told Jenny was, I was like, we need a major marketing piece. I'm a branding guy. I always talk about the books and how powerful they are. It's like, why don't we write a book? And then why don't we take the sessions from our main leaders and make them chapters in the book? Yeah. And then why don't we create a system so that every year leading into the next GovCon Summit, we release a new book. So this book really focuses on a lot of the fundamentals that business owners need to learn. And this is really, it's book number 1 in a series that goes with GovCon Summit. So next year we'll release another one. We're releasing it a couple of months before the summit so that they can get the book, they can go through the book, learn the stuff there, and then come to the summit and go beyond the book, kind of dive deeper into the sessions and the strategy and talk one-on-one with all of these experts. So again, they can just dive deeper, work through this, ask those questions live, and really just get to network with us and just go deeper. So
you created a huge value. It's a huge value. If you're missing the GovCon Summit, the new Becoming of GovCon Expert book, you don't want to really navigate.
You don't want to miss it. And I'll tell you this, I've been in the government space for 20 years. I've gone to conferences my whole career in GovCon because that's just what you do. You go to conferences. And when I went to Jenny's last year, she had the GovCon Summit in Tampa. When I went to it, I said, Jenny, I have never been to a conference where the feedback was so positive. I've never been to a conference where there isn't a single person standing off by themselves. Just, there's that wallflower,
Yeah.
And I've gone to a lot of conferences and there's always people scattered all over the walls by themselves, checking their phones, doing their thing. I never saw that. They were always engaged with 2 or 3 other people. They were sitting down talking strategy. They were sitting down talking about business deals. She brought in experts from the government and they were talking to them about opportunities that were coming down the pike. And so she just created this environment through the summit where it was just very friendly, a lot of like-minded folks, and they were just all there for the same purpose. And it was mostly veterans, which, we're just a different breed, right? We're just a different breed.
Yeah.
But just such a really good group of people. I'd never been to something like that out of hundreds of conferences. So I was blown away with the value that everybody got from attending. And that's why I joined on to be a summit leader to help take it to the next level every year. So,
and that's a lot to be said.
Yeah.
So, well, Mike, look, once again, we'd like to have you back on One Real Story or Real Talk, right? And extend the segment. But for now, everyone, they can find you in our description below. We'll put all your contact information. But thanks again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Right.
It was great stuff, man.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.